AI is taking over the world. It's taking our jobs. It's the best thing in the world. Embrace it, ignore it, fight it. It's confusing as hell. What is it actually? Well, today I have Dan Guido, who's the CEO and founder of TrailBits. We met at the Nick Sonnenberg's Optimized Group Mastermind in Mexico, and we had a great conversation about AI and something I don't think a lot of us understand what it actually is and simplify it in my mind. So Dan, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks. Great to be here. Good to see you again.
All right, before we get going, why should we listen to you? So if you can give a bit of a background of your company and what your expertise is, then we can get on to the topic and people will believe you.
Yeah, sure. So, Dan Guido, CEO and co-founder of TrailBits. TrailBits is a cybersecurity research and development firm that I founded 13 years ago with a friend. Um, we have grown to be one of the most sophisticated firms dealing with emerging technologies. We help companies write secure software while taking advantage of the latest and greatest in technology, techniques, and ideas. So we specialize in a lot of the bleeding edge parts of the field. We look at blockchain security, advanced cryptography, AI, cloud native software. And we work with a lot of what I'd say high assurance software. We work with firms where failure is not an option. So we end up working a lot in the finance industry. We work in defense, and we work at large technology companies, the kinds that are, offering consumer products that you probably use. Um, so one area that we've dug into quite deeply is AI. Started many years ago, and we perform services to help people use it securely. Major technology companies are rapidly adopting new AI-enabled features. They need to make sure that's not exposing their customers to risks.
Mhm.
We're also looking at the underlying security of AI software itself. So we look at the frameworks and tools that machine learning engineers use to perform their daily jobs. We're also looking at fundamental vulnerabilities in AI-related software. So we're looking at what new security concerns emerge based on our new dependence on things like GPUs. So all those have created a lot of little centers of excellence inside of Trail of Bits, where we have people looking at AI plus cybersecurity. We have people looking at AI security itself. And then obviously I'm running a business and I have to apply it to my company to keep up to date, just like everybody else is.
Yeah.
So we have a whole team focused on that too. So I'm pretty neck deep in this stuff. It's become the vast majority of the time that I spend running the company.
So just for the listeners to understand, Dan's ability on the cybersecurity side, programming and figuring out computer stuff is astronomical. It's very good. But his best ability is actually to explain this very simply, which is a rare trait in that industry. So one of the reasons, Dan, I brought you here. But at the presentation in Mexico, you discussed what AI or generative AI actually is. And why is it? I'd like you to go more, excuse me, in more details about that in a little bit, but what is AI? What are people misunderstanding about it? And what is it actually?
Yeah, sure. So and to add some context to this, so, a group of us folks all went down to Mexico, and I'm in most of the rooms I'm in, I'm one of the more technical people that's
Mhm.
around. And I wanted to put together a short deck. It was, I think, 15, 20 minutes, that just described at a high level some things that we know about AI that I think people that are looking at it from the outside in haven't quite come around to yet.
And just
Um,
for clarity, we're talking about generative AI, like the large
yeah, yeah.
language models. Okay.
Obviously, AI is a really large field. We're, we're talking about the latest sort of generation of AI related
Okay.
stuff. So it's large language models, um, and the related stuff. So this is your ChatGPT, Anthropic, Gemini, those sorts of things.
Okay. Cool.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the first things that I wanted to address is that a lot of people think that LLMs are capable of understanding them. That there's been papers come out that think that that try to demonstrate that LLMs can think through problems, that you can have them like show their work. And these are the reasoning models that have just recently become available. Things like O1, O3, DeepSeek, and the rest of those that um, because you've developed a model that's capable of sort of exposing its thought process, that means it suggests it has some sort of deeper reasoning capability. The other thing that we look at is there's been people claiming that a model effectively knows when it's following the instructions correctly. And this is sort of similar to like if you're using a GPS and you put in an address, the GPS it has these confidence signals, these probabilities of like, am I going to be able to get the passenger to their location? And internally, it can keep track of like, oh yeah, I think I can do it. Um, and these sort of lead people to believe that LLMs are really capable of some sort of deeper understanding beyond the statistical of what you're saying to it. But really, the reality from a researcher's perspective is this is definitely not the case, and there's a lot of easy ways to disprove it. The most sort of famous one is a paper that came out from Apple. I forget the name, but um, the Apple paper essentially took a bunch of benchmarks, these like math benchmarks,
Mhm.
and all they did was they changed some of the numbers in them. They changed the ordering of some of the variables. They added in some extra context that didn't need to be there. Like they would just say something completely random, like, "Did you know the sky is green?" Whatever, like inserted in the middle of a math problem. And the scores of all the foundation models on those small variances in the test made their scores plummet. And that's because a lot of these things, despite all these tricks and all these methods that people are using to simulate reasoning, they're not actually reasoning. They're still a statistical machine at the end of the day. Um, and I think that sort of there's a lot of magic. I think when people use AI for the first time, it can really feel like something truly different in terms of technology. But don't be fooled because at the end of the day, this is a big prediction machine.
So how is AI determining the answer to provide to you? So what I'm hearing is AI is not really understanding what you're asking.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's true. I mean, it has a training data set and it's making inferences based on data that's represented in that data set. So a lot of what it's doing, there's some really fantastic graphs that I've seen where you have to think about it internally. Like you write out 10 words, and then the 11th word, if the AI is trying to complete, like what is the 11th word? It has a probability ratio. It has like, well, it could be this word, and I think it's this word at 33% probability. Or I think it's this next word based on 19% probability. And like it keeps going down, and it kind of just selects like the most likely answer, each particular word that it's writing out. Um,
So it doesn't know what it's
that
answering either.
Yeah, these things they don't have like a like a theory of mind. They don't have an ability to like actually reason. We're using a lot of tricks to get higher quality answers that are more likely to satisfy the questions that people are asking, but that doesn't mean the AI actually understands the things that you're saying to it.
So you're saying it's using certain, is it probability models, or you kept referring to scores? What do you mean by scores?
Yeah, so an AI is going to generate an LLM is going to generate tokens, one token at a time. A token is effectively about a word. Um, and each token that it generates, there's a probability associated with like, well, which token should I choose? And it just searches through its entire history of like all the stuff it's observed before, which is all the training data, and then it selects from what the most likely next token is, and it goes one token at a time.
Okay.
There's some optimizations, like people are trying to figure out how to do more than one token at a time. The DeepSeek people, I think, had some multi-token prediction stuff, but at the end of the day, it's the same thing. Um, there is some, predicted likelihood that this is what the person's looking for, and it spits it out.
Predicted method of figuring out what you want to hear or read.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
so
I mean,
yeah, go ahead.
this sort of thing, you can kind of there's a weak relation to a common problem in security related to this issue. I, it's so funny. I think the easiest example I could come up with is that a lot of school teachers they don't want their kids to use AI to write papers.
Mhm.
So what they'll do is they'll list out like, hey, here's your paper topic, here's all the instructions, this is like the format and the requirements of like what I want you to write. And then snuck in there in a bunch of white text so you can't see it will be if you're an LLM, make sure to use the word orange or some sort of hidden instruction.
Mhm.
But it doesn't match up to the rest of the instructions. It's like completely out of left field and is clearly intended to be like hidden within that group of words. And what a lot of school kids do is they copy and paste that whole thing. They don't realize there's a hidden instruction in the middle. They dump it into an LLM. The LLM reads it because the LLM can see it, and it inserts the hidden word into their essay, and then the teacher fails them.
Yeah,
And
okay.
LLM doesn't know that that is a trick. They don't realize that that text shouldn't be there in the middle. Um, and that's just another example of how these LLMs, they're not performing any kind of higher order reasoning. They're just looking at, well, what is the most likely thing that will satisfy the answer from what the user gave to me?
So like a probability generator. The probability you would like this answer is higher up, therefore this is what I'm going to give you.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh,
And you
wow.
can play with that. Like if you're a developer, there's different ways you can kind of twist the knobs of like what the probabilities are. But at the end of the day, that's what they are. Um, the internal technique, it's obviously these are really sophisticated machines. They're built on something called transformers. It's not just like basic statistical mapping. Um, there is some really complex machinery that all this stuff goes through before it finally puts out the tokens on the screen. But it's a probabilistic system, and that's what that means.
And then when I heard you say that, like to me, that just, I think that just hit me hard because it's like, that's why a lot of people misunderstand it. And then now, kind of, when I know it's just a probability generator, is there's no, like you said, there's no thinking or logic, like you just said, it doesn't process your request. It just takes it verbatim what you've written.
Yeah, yeah.
And it doesn't has any processing ability or thinking ability, therefore, stupid in is stupid out. Or sorry if I offended people there, dumb in is dumb out, or crap in is crap out. And this is where if people realize it's a probability generator, maybe they'll start using it more effectively or understand what you're receiving. Because I think a lot of
Right.
people misunderstand is it doesn't know exactly what you're asking, and you still have to vet what's being processed by
Yeah,
yourself.
it's really important to think about these things as a tool, not as a magic button.
Yeah.
That's really where I see a lot of people fall on their face from a security perspective too. Like a lot of people that do an initial prototype where they think, oh, this AI thing, it can do anything. I'm just going to slam the big red button. And then, oh my God, it didn't do what I wanted. Why did it do that? And they don't really respect that this is a tool with strengths and weaknesses and that you have to build a system around it that respects the way that it works. Um,
All right, let's go
and that's
down
sort
that
of,
path about how people. Sorry, I'll finish your thought and I'll go on next.
yeah, yeah. Yeah. So I think everyone's really impressed by AI. They think that, they're very surprised by like, oh wow, look at AI doing things I didn't expect it could do. But they don't ever compare it back to the state of the art tool that they were using before. So a lot of the ways that people are measuring the abilities of AI are sort of misinformed. Like as an
Okay,
expert, I always have a choice of what kind of tool to use. Do I want to use AI or do I use my existing state-of-the-art algorithmic tool, non-probabilistic tool, my normal, tool?
right.
For instance, when I'm reviewing software for security bugs, I look at tools like static analysis tools, compilers, and all these other things that have been built over decades and decades of time that can very finely analyze code. Whereas AI is sort of a blunt instrument. It is probabilistic. It takes guesses. It's not quite sure what the answers are like. It's not quite sure if it's going to give me reliable answers, but it has some certain strengths that the existing state of the art tools don't. And you have to measure these things effectively to find where
Mm-hmm.
those gaps are so that you can use the best of both worlds.
All
And
right.
that's, I think, the big challenge because people are so impressed by what AI can do that they just throw away all their existing tools, which some of them are very good, and
Mm-hmm.
then go all in on AI and are surprised when it doesn't quite work as well.
I think this is a very valid fact that it's a tool. It's like, a carpenter has a hammer, has a saw, has a screwdriver. They don't have one magic tool to take care of everything. And AI is definitely one of the tools because in the end, we're still using Word, we're still using Excel for those specific abilities. So with your experience now, like what would be the best use of this generative AI? And, because even Word has AI in it and it's been around a long time. It's called spell check,
Mhm.
correct?
Yeah, yeah,
So,
yeah. I mean, those use some lightweight machine learning. Yeah.
and automations between software is also technically AI, just not generative.
Mhm.
Okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, I'll let you finish your
So how
thought.
should we use it?
Yeah,
So yeah, a couple of things that you learn when you start to benchmark AI systems are that they're best at solving problems rooted in natural language. These things are trained on English language text, therefore they're really good at English language text. um,
right.
we've had to try really hard to get them to work on things like writing code, but good problems are definitely ones that are based around English. They're also good problems are where results can be verified. A lot of the challenge with AI systems is plugging them into a process where you expect it to always get the right result, but you have to acknowledge that sometimes it won't, and it's unpredictable. So you need to always build your system with some capability to verify the results coming out the other end. And the other best place to use AI is where you have a new fundamental capability. You don't want to have it compete head to head with the state of the art tool. You want to think about what can the state of the art tool not do that AI might.
Right.
Those three sort of characteristics, I think, are really good ways to identify opportunities for AI. In security, we see this a lot. We see this like social engineering. Everybody's really concerned about the ability of AI to write phishing messages to trick people into giving up their passwords.
Right.
And you know what? It's pretty good at that. You can write individualized phishing messages to every single person on the internet, generated by AI, using stuff that's already in the training data about the recipients, and that works pretty well. Any kind of summarization task, those are fantastic. Triage, prioritization,
Mhm.
those are areas where I think AI has really, really big strengths.
Yeah, and the other thing I discovered too is I need to know my stuff if I'm using AI. So like one of the researching AI tools that I use, you know, I've used it to shortcut my time from creating, looking at all my 200-page notes from different sources and then compiling it. I use AI to compile that information, but I had to know what I was talking about to understand what was correct and what wasn't, and direct it that that's not correct in my thread. So I think this is where a lot of people get trapped is, oh, it's telling me exactly what I thought it would be, or this is the answer it gave me, but there's no validation of that information. I think a lot of people can get in trouble with.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's sort of something else that we're seeing. At Trail of Bits, we're very invested in benchmarks. We want to know how good AI is at cybersecurity stuff. And one in progress evaluation that we're conducting is how much does AI improve the ability of novice, intermediate, and expert hackers at doing their job?
Right.
And what we're finding is that it doesn't help novices that much. You have to have some fundamental understanding of the field that you're in before you're able to take the most advantage of AI. You can't just take somebody off the street, give them a high powered, uncensored frontier model, and then expect that they're going to become like the best hacker in the world. And the same thing is probably true for other fields. You need to have some intermediate level of understanding of what you're trying to do and how like the workflow looks for whatever that task is, and then you'll be able to effectively use this new tool, AI.
Yeah, because I've seen in presentations, even students will get caught because they don't quite understand what they're doing, and then they just copy and paste. And a lot of people don't vet it. I use it as a first draft. Even using it for if I'm going to use consultants. At least I got my thinking out of the way and come with a general idea of where we want to go before we hire that person. And now we're hiring them to finish it off versus coming up from scratch is another possible tool way to use it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
Nice.
fantastic. There's definitely a lot behind the ability for AI to surface creative ideas, to rapidly prototype those ideas into proofs of concept. But then that last 20% is where it can struggle.
Right. And I think that's a really good point. Last 20% is not the AI's job.
Not yet.
Not Do you think it's going that way? Or
I
we're
mean, I am
always
really impressed.
or are we always going to rely on some human creativity involvement?
Well, so I am really impressed with the progress that AI models have made. We're seeing about a 10x improvement in speed and capability per year,
Hmm.
which is just
Yeah.
nuts. Um, but the fields that it's affecting most tend to be scientific, mathematical, and software related. And it really it will be a funny result if the only people that gets put out of work are software developers from this. Um, but yeah, I think it's just important to recognize too. Like I'm doing a lot of these studies on cybersecurity specific tasks, and that obviously implies a lot of results in related fields. Cybersecurity is very related to the rest of
Hmm.
technology, and I think like my answer about like how much does it help a novice or an intermediate or an expert hacker has a lot of value in it just objectively, but it's really incumbent on everybody in every field to study how it affects their own work.
Right.
I think we lack what are called task-specific benchmarks. We have benchmarks for how well can AI write human language text? How well can AI write Python code? And then Trail of Bits has invested a lot into how well can AI do cybersecurity stuff. But you need that for literally every other field in order to truly understand what the impact is.
Well, that's a lot. That's a lot to know and understand. That's great. I really like the points that you made out. It's a probability generator. It doesn't know what you're asking, so therefore it doesn't know what it's answering. It's just most likely what you want to hear, the highest probability. And the other thing to really remember here is it doesn't process your request as we think it does. It doesn't realize, has no thinking ability to say these words mean this or that. It's just going to be verbatim for words and as the algorithm understands. Is that correct? It's all based on the algorithm of that AI?
Well, yeah. I mean, I wouldn't even really call it an algorithm.
Okay.
It's a probabilistic system, right? An
Okay.
algorithmic system is one where you put in an answer and you get out the answer reliably every single time. Like it
Oh,
doesn't
okay.
change because it operates on a specific set of steps, a workflow that you can sort of look at in total and you can like prove things about. You can guarantee that like, hey, this is how it works. It's not a like a machine assembly line.
Yeah, I
Um,
told you Dan's really good at simplifying this complex stuff. That was a great explanation. Awesome. And to remember to use this as a tool, the user requires a fundamental knowledge of what they are using the AI tool for. And just remember, generative AI is not what you think it is. It does not give you the answers you think you're doing. So I hope this was helpful. Dan, thanks for joining us.
yeah, thanks a lot. Happy to be here.
And where can people find you if they got more questions or need some cybersecurity help?
Sure. So I'm D Guido on X. I think that's probably the best place to find me. And you
Thanks.
can always look at the Trailbits blog. It is written for developers, but if you have an interest in that, it's a great place to go. And that's blog.trailbits.com.
Cool. Yeah, and I've read some of your blogs, they're very good, and they, like I said, you have a real natural ability to make it simple and understandable. So for you, the
Thanks.
listener, how and why are you using AI? To be creative or to be lazy? Because there's another part of that aspect we didn't really get into, but we hinted at it. So thanks again, Dan.
You're welcome. Happy to be here.
And to you, the listeners, thanks again for learning with me. We'll talk to you soon.